media, I think, is a bit like a mirror. It's a reflection of what is happening in our societies and in our communities. But of course, nowadays, our societies are changing. They're changing faster than at any other point in history. And so also our media is changing, but not just that, because the way we consume that media is undergoing fundamental change as well. And what I'd like to do, if you'll let me, is to explore some of those changes and where perhaps we are heading when it comes to media, using my vocation of radio as an example. Because I think that sound is actually the senior medium, and that our hearing is our senior sense. Trouble is, we don't use our hearing really as much as we should, because we can always get a lot more out of it. Now, when I was young, my family had a bit of an odd tradition, because what we would do each year at Christmas is we would give our two dogs Christmas presents, and they would give us Christmas presents too, which was great, because you get like 2 more Christmas presents. One year, and I remember it very, very, very clearly, I was 14 years old, and these 2 little fellas gave me one of these. It's a clock radio. Now, for the younger people here, I'll explain what that is. It's a clock that's also a radio. But the clever part is that the clock also means alarm clock. So you get to wake up in the morning hearing the sounds of your favorite radio station. That probably doesn't happen much to most people sitting in this room. But just think about it, you know, instead of what you can have is, well, good morning, this is TEDx Youth. At NIS, it's 8 minutes after 7, and it's time to get up. Now, which is the better of the two? What would you rather? Let's look at this. They don't make them like that anymore. But when I was young and I got that clock radio, something happened to me that I didn't expect, because the purposes of a machine is to make you get out of bed in the morning. But what I was doing is I was listening to the clock radio when I should have been getting up, so it was having the exact reverse effect. And I just wasn't getting out of bed in the morning. So what actually happened was that my mother called the radio station in desperation, explained the situation, and asked them if they could do something about it. A few minutes later, this voice came out of the radio which said, "Francis Hossack, listening in there, who won't get out of bed, young man, it is time to get up. You can't waste your life away like this." Needless to say, from that point, my future and fate was sealed, because I was thrilled by this. I'm absolutely hooked. So I'm going to be, you know, the #1 person to say that, hey, radio is better than television. Because it is. But let's explore just why that is. So, firstly, working in radio, well, we get to go to work in our underwear. Secondly, there's still no shame associated with working in radio. No, but seriously, let's think about the nature of sound and what it's doing to us. Have you ever watched a television with the sound turned down? You couldn't hear the audio. Of course you have. Could you understand it? Nope. Almost nothing. Likewise, have you ever heard a television that's been on in the next room? You can't see the pictures, but you can hear the audio. Understand it? Sure. Most of it. Easy. For this very reason, many TV stations in China rebroadcast or simulcast on the radio. It's okay, you understand it, it's close enough. That happens a lot in China. So that, I think, is just, one of the main reasons why radio is such a powerful medium. Intimacy is the next reason. Because when you're listening to the radio, you're having an intimate relationship between you and the person doing the broadcast, because most radio is still consumed between two people. One of them's on the radio and one of them isn't, but you can't see each other. So it's a little like being in the dark with a friend and having a conversation. You're missing out on a lot that you're using your imagination to make up for what you can't see. And it's for this very reason that working in radio, we say that the pictures on radio are better. Radio is also a fantastically mobile medium. Huge amounts, huge proportions of listening to radio is done in vehicles. Step into a taxi in China, and I can virtually guarantee you the driver is listening to the local traffic channel. And with good reason. There are advantages to a media system which is owned 100% by the government. And that is, it gives you unprecedented access to almost anywhere. Here in Nanjing, the traffic channel of Nanjing Radio, their studios are not even in the radio station. They're in the headquarters of the traffic police. In that building, there is this big glass box, which is the radio studio, and from it, the guys on air at the time, telling people about the traffic conditions, can do so because through the glass wall, they can see a wall of video cameras, which is the size of this, which is showing them live coverage from every single major traffic intersection in the city. So they were able to say, right now on Zhongshan Nanlu, somebody has just made an illegal left turn. Radio is also a champion of music and has made the careers of every single major recording star of the last 50 years. And that's another advantage of working in radio, is that we get piles, hundreds of free CDs sent to us by the record companies every week, eager for us to play their acts on the air and make them famous and rich. Sometimes they even come to see us as well, and that's the coolest part. This is the best band ever to come out of Scotland, Texas. And I can tell you that having this lady, Charlene Spiteri, sing to you, and you alone, in your radio studio, apart from the 50,000 other people listening outside, is the greatest experience in the world. Go, Charlene! Radio also has powers to incite us to action. And here is an example from quite some time ago. Check the date line on that, 1938. And in this example, the sci-fi classic by H.G. Wells, The War of the Worlds, was converted into a radio drama and directed by Orson Welles. And in what was brilliant radio scheduling, they chose to broadcast this when on a competing channel they had a program which was very good coming to an end, and then a program which was very boring about to begin. What happens? People start channel hopping. And many of them stumbled upon this. But they had already missed the first part of the program. The part of the program that says the following is a dramatization. They thought it was happening. In the story, aliens come from Mars, invade Earth, humankind is routed. It's the end of the world, essentially. And many people did flee their homes and race to the hills. Another example. This one a little bit more up to date and a little closer to home. That is downtown Shanghai in 1993. The horizon's gone up about 400 meters. But that was my home, and in a hotel room there, I helped to produce a radio program which went on to be the most popular radio program on Earth. Now, this was at a time when China was growing and expanding, and everybody wanted to sell their products to China. Still do. In this case, it was a coffee company that has since been credited, and the radio programs have been credited with having helped to start and be a major influence behind China's coffee culture. Now, just how did we do that? Well, we simply went on the radio in China and did what we've been doing in our countries for 50 years, which was we played a piece of pop music and had some fun. At the time, radio in China was very, very serious. And, to be honest, very, very boring. So when we come in and have a bit of fun on the radio and play this, you know, terribly, terribly outlandish Western music, perish the word, it was like a breath of fresh air. You know, and the people responded incredibly. So at one point, at its peak, this radio program had over 100 million listeners. And that's more than the BBC World Service. And it was all from a hotel room in Shanghai. There we are. That's an old photo. Selling coffee to a nation of tea drinkers. So how do all these wonderful messages come at us? Well, still, the bulk of radio is transmitted from something like this, a nice big, juicy FM transmitter. But of course that's changing. More and more listening is now being done online and by satellite. And these changes are fundamental to what's happening. Because once a radio station is available online, then your whole audience changes. I started my career in a little radio station in the north of Scotland called Moray Firth Radio, and the joke was they'd had more sheep than listeners. And that was pretty true, actually. But then what happens is, of course, you put your content online, and now almost every radio station has its own website, and you can go online anywhere around the world and listen to it. So suddenly, you know, instead of all those sheep, you've got the whole world at your fingertips. Take that one step further, introduce apps. There are apps whereby you can use as a directory, search them for what you fancy, the sort of content you're interested in. Some radio stations even make their own app. Here's a good example. This is, or was, the London Broadcasting Company. LBC, Britain's first commercial radio station, launched in 1973 with a mixture of talk and news and sport. It was a talk station. And this is where it gets really interesting, because if you don't have any music, then you have a lot fewer problems with copyright. So music copyright is extremely complicated. It works differently in different territories. But if you have a talk radio station, then the world's your oyster. And in their case, they were able to go from being a radio station that just served London to one which serves the whole country, to the extent that they even changed the name of the radio station. So now LBC means Leading Britain's Conversation. Now this is where things really start getting exciting, because we're now moving into really new forms of media. This is what's called, in China, a zhibo, or a live broadcast. And this is the hot topic. Essentially, what it is, it's a selfie, which is a video which is connected to the internet, and anyone can watch it. Okay, great. This example is just from last weekend. In the story, a man has been stuck in India, a Chinese man has been stuck in India for more than 50 years. Last weekend, he came home. There's the interesting figure at the bottom. 5.264 million people watched this broadcast. That's quite impressive. But what's truly remarkable is the fact that for most of the broadcast, there was nothing happening on the screen. They were camped out at the airport waiting for this guy to turn up. Flights came, flights went. Occasionally somebody walked in front of the camera, but really nothing happened, except with the audio. The audio was where it's at. So what is this new medium? It's not radio. It's certainly nothing like a television station. So what is it? A mobile phone live broadcast? Well, that's not a very catchy name. We're going to have to do something about that. I suggest perhaps teleradio. We don't know. This is where we're going in the future. So with radio now, there are so many new ways for you to be able to enjoy that. And I believe that radio is having a bit of a renaissance, just like good old-fashioned vinyl for listening to music. Sales have never been so good. And that, you know, we have a second coming of radio where there's a whole new world at your fingertips. So I encourage you to go online, search for whatever it is that you're interested in. It could be anything from the latest hip-hop to some obscure jazz. I guarantee you're going to find it, and you'll be happy that you did, because we can enrich our lives further just by using our ears. Thank you very much.